Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I think I didn't do anything wrong, just had a little fun at my husband's promotion party. It was only flirting, nothing serious, at least that's what I told myself. But when the legal papers landed in my mailbox, I realized my husband saw it very, very differently. The mirror reflected back a woman who knew she looked good. At 32, I still had it. The curves that turned heads, the smile that made men stumble over their words. Tonight was Evan's big night, his promotion party, and I was going to make sure everyone remembered Mrs. Marilla Vane. "You look beautiful, honey," Evan said from behind me, adjusting his tie nervously. At 35, my husband was still that quiet, ambitious man I'd married 8 years ago. Sometimes too quiet for my taste. "Just beautiful," I teased, spinning around in my red dress. I was going for stunning. He smiled, but I caught something in his eyes. Worry? "Marilla, about tonight. Could we keep things, respectful? This is really important for my career." I laughed, the sound echoing in our spacious bedroom. "Evan, you're being ridiculous. I'm always respectful. I'm just naturally social, unlike some people." I know. It's just that Jonas will be there and he's my boss now. I don't want any misunderstandings. Jonas Blair, 48, divorced, and undeniably charismatic. I'd met him at a few company events, and yes, there had been some harmless flirting. What was wrong with a little fun? "You're being too sensitive," I said, brushing past him to grab my purse. "I can handle myself around your precious boss." From downstairs, our 7-year-old daughter Daisy called up, "Mummy, Daddy, why are you talking so loud?" Evan's face fell slightly. "We should go. Mom and Dad are watching Daisy tonight." Right on cue, the doorbell rang. Helen and Martin Vane, Evan's parents, were punctual as always. Helen, at 61, had never quite warmed up to me. She thought her precious son could do better. Martin, 64, was the peacekeeper, but I knew where his loyalties lay. "Marilla," Helen said coolly as we came downstairs, giving me one of her trademark once-overs. "That's quite a dress." "Thank you," I replied sweetly, knowing she hadn't meant it as a compliment. Martin hugged his son. "Congratulations again, Evan. We're so proud of you." Daisy ran up to me, her little face scrunched with concern. "Mommy, are you and Daddy fighting?" "Of course not, sweetheart," I said, scooping her up. "Daddy's just nervous about his party." Helen shot me a look that could freeze water. "I'm sure everything will go perfectly fine," she said in that tone that suggested she expected the opposite. As we were leaving, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister Fiona. "Go get 'em, Tiger. Time to show those corporate stuffed shirts how to have real fun." I grinned, typing back quickly, planning a little mischief. I didn't notice Evan reading over my shoulder until I heard his sharp intake of breath. "Marilla, what kind of mischief?" "Oh, relax," I said, slipping my phone into my purse. "It's just Fiona being Fiona. You know how she is." But I could see the worry lines deepening around his eyes as we got into the car. The corporate banquet hall was exactly what I'd expected. Bland, beige, and boring. About 50 people milled around with drinks and forced smiles, the kind of networking event that made my skin crawl. But tonight was different. Tonight, I was going to be the center of attention. "There's Jonas," Evan said, pointing toward a tall man with salt and pepper hair holding court near the bar. Perfect. The moment Jonas Blair spotted me across the room, I knew I had him. His eyes lingered just a second too long on my red dress, and that familiar smile spread across his face, the one that had probably charmed dozens of women before me. "Evan," Jonas called out, but his gaze never left me. "And the lovely Marilla, you look absolutely stunning tonight." I felt Evan tense beside me, but I just smiled wider. "Why, thank you, Jonas. You clean up pretty well yourself." "Can I get you both drinks?" Jonas asked. already signaling the bartender. "That would be wonderful," I said, stepping closer to him. "I'll have a martini. Extra dirty." I caught Jonas's slight smirk at my choice of words. Evan ordered a beer, his jaw tight. "So, Marilla," Jonas said as we waited for our drinks, "Evan tells me you work in HR consulting. That must be fascinating." "Oh, it has its moments," I replied, touching his arm lightly. "Though I imagine running this whole operation is much more exciting. All that power, all those important decisions." "Power can be intoxicating," Jonas said, his voice dropping slightly. Evan cleared his throat loudly. "Actually, Jonas, I wanted to thank you again for the promotion. It means everything to our family." But Jonas was still looking at me. "I'm sure Marilla keeps you very motivated at home." "She certainly keeps life interesting," Evan said, and I could hear the strain in his voice. My best friend Cassidy appeared at my elbow, looking elegant in navy blue. At 33, she was my closest confidant, though lately she'd been acting like such a prude. "Marilla," she said, kissing my cheek, "you look incredible." "Hi, Evan, Jonas." "Cassidy," I exclaimed. "Perfect timing. Jonas was just telling us about the intoxicating nature of power." Cassidy's eyes flicked between Jonas and me, and I saw her expression tighten slightly. "How interesting." "Excuse me," Evan said suddenly. "I should go thank some of the other executives for coming." As he walked away, I felt a flutter of annoyance. This was supposed to be his night, but he was being such a wet blanket. "Your husband seems tense," Jonas observed, moving closer. "Evan's always been the anxious type," I said with a laugh. "He worries about everything. I keep telling him he needs to learn to have fun." "And what about you, Marilla? Do you know how to have fun?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility. I was very aware of Cassidy shifting uncomfortably beside me. "I think I do," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "Marilla?" Cassidy interrupted. "Didn't you mention wanting to see the view from the terrace?" I waved her off. "Later, Cass. Jonas, tell me more about your role here. It must be so satisfying to be in charge of so many people." For the next hour, I let Jonas regale me with stories of corporate conquests and business victories. I laughed at all his jokes, touched his arm when he made particularly amusing observations, and made sure my body language was unmistakably flirtatious. From across the room, I could see Evan watching us, his face growing darker by the minute. Good. Maybe a little jealousy would remind him what he had. "Marilla," Evan appeared at my side again, his voice tight with control. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" "Oh, Evan, don't be such a party pooper," I said loudly enough for several nearby colleagues to hear. Jonas was just telling me the most fascinating story about the Henderson merger. "It can wait," Evan said firmly, taking my elbow. I pulled away dramatically. "Honestly, Evan, you're being so jealous tonight. It's just conversation." A few people turned to look, and I saw Jonas's eyebrows raise with amusement. Perfect. Let everyone see how controlling my husband was being. "I'm not jealous," Evan said quietly, his face reddening. "I just think—" "You think too much," I interrupted, turning back to Jonas with an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry. My husband gets a little insecure at these work functions." The words hung in the air like a slap. I saw Evan's face crumble, saw several of his colleagues exchange uncomfortable glances. But I was riding high on the attention, on the power I felt radiating from Jonas's appreciative gaze. "Perhaps we should get some air," Jonas suggested smoothly. "It's getting rather warm in here." "That sounds perfect," I said, taking his offered arm. As we walked toward the terrace, I caught sight of Helen and Martin Vane near the entrance. Helen's face was a mask of disapproval, and she was whispering urgently in Martin's ear. Across the room, Fiona was taking pictures with her phone, grinning like she was watching the best show on earth. But it was Cassidy's expression that gave me the first real pang of doubt. She looked genuinely worried, shaking her head slightly as our eyes met. I pushed the feeling aside. I was just having fun. There was nothing wrong with a little harmless flirting. On the terrace, Jonas moved closer, his hand brushing against mine as we leaned against the railing. "You're quite captivating, Marilla," he said softly. "Evan's a lucky man." "Is he?" I asked, looking up at him through my lashes. Jonas smiled, leaning closer. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. I know a lovely little restaurant not far from here." My heart raced. This was it, the moment of truth. I could go back inside to my anxious husband and his boring colleagues, or I could grab hold of this excitement, this feeling of being truly desired. "I'd like that," I whispered. Jonas's smile widened. He leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear. "Meet me there in an hour. I'll text you the address." When I turned around, Evan was standing in the doorway, his face white as paper. Our eyes met across the terrace, and I saw something die in his expression. Without a word, he turned and walked away. I found out later that he left the party without saying goodbye to anyone. The restaurant Jonas had chosen was exactly the kind of place I'd imagined. Dim lighting, intimate booths, and the sort of atmosphere that whispered of secrets and possibilities. I'd gone home first, changed into something even more alluring, and told myself I was just extending the evening's fun. Evan hadn't been there when I arrived. Good. I didn't need his disapproving looks ruining my mood. Jonas was waiting at a corner booth, looking relaxed and confident in his expensive suit. He stood when he saw me, his eyes appreciative as they took in my black cocktail dress. "You came," he said, kissing my cheek in greeting. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped you would. Please, sit." The wine he'd ordered was perfect, smooth and warming. As we talked, I found myself leaning closer, laughing more freely than I had in months. This was what I'd been missing, the thrill of being pursued, of being the center of someone's complete attention. "Tell me about yourself, Marilla," Jonas said, his fingers brushing mine across the table. "What makes you happy?" "Feeling alive," I said without hesitation. "Feeling like I matter, like I'm more than just someone's wife and someone's mother." "You're definitely more than that," he said, his voice low and intimate. My phone buzzed insistently. Cassidy's name flashed on the screen, followed by a string of increasingly urgent texts. "Where are you?" "Evan left the party early. People are talking." "This is getting out of hand, Marilla. Please just come home." I silenced the phone and slipped it back into my purse. "Problems?" Jonas asked. "Just my friend being dramatic. You know how women can be." He laughed, refilling my wine glass. "I do indeed. Though I have to say, you're not like most women I know." "How so?" "You're not afraid to go after what you want. It's refreshing." What did I want? Looking across the table at Jonas, feeling the warmth of the wine and the intoxicating rush of his attention, I thought I knew. "My marriage," I began, then stopped. "Yes?" "It's complicated. Evan's a good man, but he's so safe, predictable. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating." Jonas nodded sympathetically. "I understand completely. My ex-wife used to say I was too ambitious, too focused on my career. Some people just can't handle passion." "Exactly," I said, perhaps a bit too loudly. The wine was making me bold. "Evan doesn't understand that I need excitement, adventure. He just wants to come home, eat dinner, and watch television." "What a waste," Jonas murmured, his hand covering mine completely now. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Helen's number. I let it go to voicemail, but the interruption broke the spell slightly. "I should probably," I started. "One more drink," Jonas suggested. "The night is still young." But even as I nodded, I felt a small knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. Where was Evan? What was he thinking right now? I pushed the thoughts away. I deserved this. I deserved to feel wanted, desired, alive. "You know," Jonas said, leaning closer, "I've been thinking about you since the first time we met at the Christmas party last year." Really? Really? You have this energy, this magnetism. It's quite powerful. I felt myself glowing under his praise. When was the last time Evan had said anything like that to me? I should be honest, I said, the wine making me reckless. I'm basically single. My marriage is, well, it's not really a marriage anymore. The lie slipped out so easily, I almost believed it myself. Jonas's eyes gleamed. Is that so? Before I could respond, my phone rang loudly. Evan's name appeared on the screen, and suddenly the romantic atmosphere felt suffocating. Excuse me, I said, stepping outside to answer. Marilla, where are you? Evan's voice was strained, desperate. I'm out with friends, I said automatically. What friends? Cassidy's been calling me looking for you. My parents are worried sick. Daisy keeps asking where you are. Guilt stabbed through me at the mention of our daughter. I'm fine, Evan. Stop being so paranoid. Paranoid? Marilla, you disappeared from my promotion party with my boss. People saw you leave together. We're just having drinks, I said defensively. God, you make everything sound so sordid. Come home, please, we need to talk. I'll be home when I'm ready, I snapped and hung up. When I returned to the table, Jonas was watching me with an unreadable expression. Everything all right? Just my husband being controlling, I said, forcing a smile. He doesn't like it when I have fun without him. But the mood had shifted. Jonas seemed more distant, and I found myself drinking faster, trying to recapture the earlier magic. By the time we left the restaurant, it was nearly midnight. Jonas walked me to my car, his hand on the small of my back. This was lovely, he said. We should do it again soon. I'd like that, I said, leaning up to kiss his cheek. But he turned slightly, and our lips met instead. It was brief, just a moment, but it changed everything. Good night, Marilla, he said softly. As I drove home through the empty streets, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and dread. The kiss replayed in my mind, along with Evan's desperate voice on the phone. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Evan's car was there, but so was his parents' car. My stomach dropped. Inside, I found Evan sitting at the kitchen table with Helen and Martin. All three looked up when I entered, their faces grave. Where have you been? Helen demanded, her voice icy. Out, I said defiantly. Last I checked, I was an adult who could go where she pleased. Daisy was crying, Evan said quietly. She wanted her mother, and you were nowhere to be found. The guilt hit me like a physical blow, but I pushed it away. I couldn't let them make me the villain here. I was at dinner with friends, I lied smoothly. I'm sorry if that inconvenienced everyone. What friends? Martin asked gently. Cassidy called looking for you. Fiona said she hadn't heard from you. I felt trapped, cornered. I don't have to explain myself to any of you. Yes, you do, Helen said, standing up. When you humiliate my son at his own promotion party, when you disappear and leave your daughter asking where her mother is, you absolutely have to explain yourself. I didn't humiliate anyone, I shot back. I was being friendly. If Evan can't handle that, maybe he should work on his own insecurities. Evan flinched as if I'd slapped him. That's enough, Martin said firmly. Helen, we should go home. After his parents left, Evan and I stood in the kitchen, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. Marilla, he said finally, what's happening to us? I wanted to tell him everything, about feeling invisible, about needing to feel desired, about how scared I was that our marriage had become a routine instead of a romance. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I heard myself say, Nothing's happening, Evan. You're making a big deal out of nothing. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression, something final. Okay, he said quietly, if that's how you want to play this. He turned and walked upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the taste of Jonas's kiss still on my lips and the growing certainty that I'd just made a terrible mistake. The next morning brought a silence that felt different from our usual comfortable quiet. This was the silence of a marriage holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Evan had already left for work by the time I came downstairs. Daisy sat at the kitchen table, picking at her cereal, her small face troubled. "Mommy, why was Daddy sleeping in the guest room?" she asked. My heart clenched. He was working late and didn't want to wake me up, sweetheart. It was another lie in a growing collection of them. After dropping Daisy at school, I drove to Cassidy's apartment. I needed to talk to someone who would understand, who wouldn't judge me for having a little fun. But when Cassidy opened the door, her expression was far from understanding. "Marilla, what the hell were you thinking last night?" "Nice to see you too," I said, pushing past her into the living room. "Don't be flip with me. I saw you leave with Jonas. Everyone saw you leave with Jonas. Do you have any idea how that looked?" I sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. "We just had dinner, Cass. It's not like we ran away together." "Just dinner?" She sat across from me, her voice sharp. "You disappeared from your husband's promotion party with his boss. You ignored my calls. You ignored Evan's calls. Your in-laws were worried sick." "Since when are you Team Evan?" I snapped. "Since you started acting like a crazy person," Cassidy shot back. "Marilla, I've been your friend for 15 years. I've supported you through everything. But this is different." "How is it different?" "I'm just trying to have some fun, to feel alive again." "By humiliating your husband in public? By lying to your daughter? By having dinner with another man while your family falls apart?" Her words hit like slaps, each one making me flinch. But I couldn't back down now. I couldn't admit that she might be right. "You don't understand," I said. "You're not married. You don't know what it's like to feel invisible in your own life. So fix your marriage. Talk to Evan. Don't blow it up by chasing after his boss." "I'm not chasing anyone," I protested. "Jonas and I are just friends." Cassidy stared at me for a long moment. "Do you even hear yourself? Do you honestly believe what you're saying?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. Jonas's name appeared on the screen, and I felt my pulse quicken. "Hello?" "Marilla, darling, I had such a wonderful time last night. I was wondering if you'd like to have lunch today." I was aware of Cassidy watching me, her expression growing more concerned by the second. Yes, that sounds lovely." "Excellent. The same place as last night, 1 o'clock. "Perfect." When I hung up, Cassidy was shaking her head. "Marilla, please don't do this. Think about Daisy. Think about your marriage." "There's nothing to think about," I said, standing up. "It's just lunch." But as I left Cassidy's apartment, I could feel her disappointed gaze following me. Lunch with Jonas was everything I'd hoped it would be. He was charming, attentive, and made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. We talked about everything: books, movies, dreams, desires. He listened to me in a way Evan hadn't in years. "You're wasted in suburbia," he said over dessert. "You should be living in the city, experiencing culture, adventure." "Sometimes I think about it," I admitted, "about what my life might have been like if I'd made different choices." "It's never too late to make new choices," he said meaningfully. When he walked me to my car, he kissed me again. This time it wasn't brief or accidental. This time I kissed him back. "I should go," I whispered against his lips. "Should you?" he murmured. For a moment I wavered, but then I thought about Daisy, about school pickup, about the life I'd built, even if it sometimes felt like a prison. "Yes," I said reluctantly. "Another time then," Jonas said, his thumb tracing my cheek. I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling, my mind spinning with possibilities. Maybe Cassidy was wrong. Maybe this was exactly what I needed. The house was quiet when I arrived, too quiet. I found Evan in his study, papers spread across his desk, his laptop open. "How was work?" I asked, trying to sound normal. He looked up at me, and I was startled by the coldness in his eyes. "Fine. How was your day?" "Good. I had lunch with Cassidy." Another lie. They were coming so easily now. "Interesting," Evan said, "because Cassidy called here looking for you around 1:30. My stomach dropped. "Oh, well, we had lunch early and then—" "Stop," His voice was quiet but firm. Just stop lying to me. We stared at each other across the room, and I felt the last pretense crumbling between us. I know where you were, Marilla. I know who you were with. Evan, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why my wife is having secret lunches with my boss? Can you explain why you humiliated me at my own promotion party? Can you explain why our daughter asked me this morning if Mommy and Daddy were getting divorced? The last question hit me like a physical blow. She asked what? She's 7 years old and she can see what you're apparently blind to. Our marriage is falling apart. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I pushed them back. It doesn't have to be. We can work through this. Work through what exactly? Your affair? It's not an affair, I protested. We're just friends. Evan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Friends don't sneak around. Friends don't lie to their spouses. Friends don't kiss in restaurant parking lots. My blood turned to ice. How did you... I hired a private investigator, he said simply. I needed to know what was really going on. I felt the room spinning around me. You had me followed? I had to. You've been lying to me for weeks. About where you're going, who you're seeing, what you're doing. What choice did I have? You could have trusted me. Trust you? Evan stood up, his face flushed with anger. You've been lying to me, to our daughter, to our friends and family. You've made me look like a fool in front of my colleagues. You've been carrying on with my boss while telling everyone I'm paranoid and controlling. What exactly should I trust? I opened my mouth to argue, but no words came, because deep down, I knew he was right. I want you to stop seeing him, Evan said quietly. You can't tell me who I can and can't see, I said automatically. I'm not telling you, I'm asking you. As your husband, as the father of your child, I'm asking you to stop this before it destroys everything we've built. I looked at him standing there, this man I'd married, this father of my child, and I felt nothing. No spark, no excitement, no passion. Just the weight of 8 years of routine and responsibility. I can't, I whispered. Evan's face crumbled. Can't or won't? I don't know anymore. He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected this answer. Then I guess we have nothing more to talk about, he said. That night, I lay alone in our king-size bed, listening to the sounds of Evan moving around in the guest room. I thought about Jonas, about the way he made me feel alive and desired. I thought about Cassidy's disappointed face, about Daisy's innocent questions, about the look in Evan's eyes when I said I couldn't stop. I told myself I was fighting for my happiness, for my right to feel alive. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, I wondered if I was just running away from everything that mattered. Outside, I heard a car door slam and footsteps on the driveway. Through the window, I saw Evan loading suitcases into his car. He was leaving, and somehow, I couldn't find the words to stop him. 3 weeks later, I sat in the sterile waiting room of Peterson and Associates, Family Law, staring at divorce papers that made everything terrifyingly real. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Peterson, had just finished explaining Evan's petition. He's asking for primary custody of your daughter, she said matter-of-factly, and he's provided substantial documentation to support his case. My hands shook as I flipped through the evidence packet. Photos from the promotion party, showing me draped over Jonas, restaurant receipts, text messages I didn't even remember sending, a statement from Daisy's school counselor, noting behavioral changes, and the child's concerns about her parents' marriage. This is ridiculous, I said, my voice higher than I intended. I'm her mother. You can't just take a child away from her mother. Mrs. Vane, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. Your husband has documented evidence of infidelity, abandonment of parental duties, and what could be construed as emotional abuse. Emotional abuse? That's insane. You publicly humiliated him at a work function. You've been carrying on an affair with his superior, which could affect his employment. You've lied repeatedly to your family and friends. The court might view this as a pattern of manipulative behavior. I felt the walls closing in. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to be the victim here, the woman trapped in a loveless marriage finally breaking free. "I want to fight this," I said. Ms. Peterson looked at me skeptically. "Mrs. Vane, I have to advise you that fighting this could make things much worse. Your husband is being remarkably generous in his settlement offer, considering the circumstances." "Generous? He's trying to steal my daughter. He's offering joint custody with him as primary guardian. You'd have Daisy every other weekend and one evening per week. Given the evidence he has, many courts would award him full custody." The room spun around me. "This is all Jonas's fault," I muttered. "He pursued me. He made me think." "Mrs. Vane," Ms. Peterson interrupted gently, "Mr. Blair has provided a statement to your husband's attorney. He claims you told him you were separated and actively pursuing divorce. He says he had no idea you were misrepresenting your marital status." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Jonas had thrown me under the bus to protect himself. "That's not true," I whispered. "Can you prove it's not true?" I couldn't, because in my desperation to keep his attention, I had told him exactly what he claimed. "I need some air," I said, standing abruptly. Outside the law office, I called Fiona, my sister, the one person who I knew would take my side. "This is unbelievable," Fiona raged when I told her about the meeting. "Evan is being vindictive. He can't handle that you found someone better." "Right," I said, grateful for her support. "He's trying to punish me for being happy. You should fight this with everything you have. Don't let him intimidate you." But even as Fiona ranted about men and their fragile egos, I felt a growing sense of unease. Was I really the victim here? Or had I become something I didn't recognize? I tried calling Cassidy, but it went straight to voicemail. She'd been avoiding me since our confrontation at her apartment. That evening, I drove to the house where Evan was staying with Daisy, his parents' place. I needed to see my daughter, to remind myself what I was fighting for. Helen answered the door, her face like stone. "I want to see Daisy," I said. "She's doing homework." "She's my daughter, Helen. You can't keep her from me." "I'm not keeping her from anyone. But I won't have you upsetting her more than you already have." "I haven't upset her. Evan's the one who moved out, who's confusing her with all this legal nonsense." Helen's eyes flashed with anger. "Legal nonsense? Marilla, do you have any idea what you've put this family through? What you've put that little girl through?" "I haven't done anything wrong." "Haven't you?" Helen stepped closer, her voice low and furious. "You humiliated my son in front of his colleagues. You abandoned your family to chase after another man. You've lied and manipulated and hurt everyone who cares about you. And you think you haven't done anything wrong?" Before I could respond, Daisy appeared behind her grandmother, her small face lighting up when she saw me. "Mommy!" She ran into my arms and I held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "I missed you, baby," I whispered. "When are you and Daddy coming home?" she asked, looking up at me with those trusting eyes. I felt my heart break a little more. "I don't know, sweetheart." "Daisy," Evan's voice came from behind us. "Time for your bath." I looked up to see him standing in the hallway, his face carefully neutral. He looked tired, older somehow. "Can we talk?" I asked. He nodded, and we stepped outside while Helen took Daisy upstairs. "Evan, please, we can work this out. We don't need lawyers and courts and all this drama." "Don't we?" he asked quietly. "Marilla, you're still seeing him." It was true. I'd met Jonas for drinks twice since Evan moved out, but it wasn't the same. He was pulling back, being more careful, and I could feel his interest waning. "It's not what you think," I said. "What do I think?" "I don't know, that I'm some kind of monster, apparently, that I don't love my daughter, that I don't care about our family." Evan was quiet for a long moment. "I think you're lost," he said finally. "I think you've been unhappy for a long time, and instead of talking to me about it, instead of working on our marriage, you decided to blow everything up." "That's not..." I think you've convinced yourself that you're the victim in all of this, that everyone else is the problem. But Marilla, look around. Look at what's left of our life together. Look at our daughter, asking when we're coming home. This isn't happening to you. This is what you chose. His words hit harder than any anger or accusation could have, because somewhere deep down I knew he was right. I never meant for any of this to happen, I whispered. I know, he said sadly, but it did happen, and now we have to figure out how to move forward. I want to come home, Evan. I want us to be a family again. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the war playing out in his expression, love fighting with hurt, hope battling with resignation. Are you willing to stop seeing Jonas? He asked. The question hung between us, and I felt the weight of everything balanced on my answer. I thought about Jonas, about the excitement and passion I felt with him, but I also thought about Daisy, about the home we'd built, about the man standing in front of me who'd loved me for 8 years. I started, then stopped. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to choose my family, my daughter, the life I'd built, but something in me rebelled against giving up that feeling of being desired, of being alive. I need time to think, I said. Evan's face fell, and I saw the last hope die in his eyes. Then I guess you've already given me your answer, he said quietly. As I drove away from his parents' house, I told myself I was being smart, keeping my options open. But the taste in my mouth was bitter, and the face in my rearview mirror looked like a stranger. 2 months later, I sat in a neutral cafe downtown, staring at the final divorce papers spread across the small table. Evan sat across from me, looking calm and resolved in a way that made my stomach churn. The house, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, will be sold. We'll split the proceeds, minus what I've invested in improvements over the last 2 years. And Daisy? Joint custody, as we discussed. Primary residence with me during the school year, alternating weekends with you. I nodded numbly. Everything was so clinical, so final. This wasn't how I'd imagined my life would turn out. The school forms need to be updated, Evan continued, sliding another document across the table. I'll be listed as primary guardian for emergency contacts and medical decisions. I picked up the paper and saw Daisy's school information, my name relegated to secondary contact. The reality of what I'd lost hit me like a freight train. Evan, I said, my voice cracking, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. He looked up at me, and I saw not anger but a deep sadness in his eyes. I know you are, Marilla, but sorry doesn't fix this. It could, I said desperately. We could try again. I ended things with Jonas weeks ago. I know I made mistakes, but... Mistakes? Evan's voice was quiet but firm. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Every day for months you chose to lie to me, to our daughter, to our friends and family. You chose to humiliate me in public. You chose another man over your marriage. I chose excitement over boredom, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I chose feeling alive over feeling invisible. Evan flinched as if I'd slapped him. Is that really how you saw our marriage? As boredom? Sometimes, I admitted. Evan, we were like roommates. We went through the motions, but where was the passion? Where was the romance? We were partners, he said quietly. We were raising a daughter together, building a life together. I thought that mattered to you. It did matter. It does matter. But I needed more. Then you should have talked to me. You should have told me you were unhappy instead of seeking validation from other men. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but the words felt hollow. Because he was right, I had sought validation from Jonas, from the attention and desire I'd felt starved of, but I'd never given Evan the chance to address my unhappiness. The papers, Evan said gently, pulling me back to the present. I signed them with shaking hands, each signature feeling like another nail in the coffin of my old life. As we prepared to leave, I saw Helen and Martin Vane through the cafe window. Helen was holding Daisy's hand, and my daughter was skipping happily beside her grandmother. She's doing better, Evan said, following my gaze. The counselor says children are resilient. Does she ask about me? Every day, but she's adjusting to the new routine. Daisy spotted us through the window and waved excitedly. I waved back, trying to smile, but tears were already blurring my vision. I'll pick her up Friday at 6, I said. I know. We'll make this work, Marilla, for her sake. As Evan walked away to join his parents and our daughter, I sat alone in the cafe, staring at my copy of the divorce settlement. My name had been removed from the house deed, from Daisy's school forms, from the life I'd built over 8 years. I thought about Jonas, who had stopped returning my calls after the divorce proceedings began. I thought about Cassidy, who had sent a polite but distant text wishing me well. I thought about Fiona, who was still encouraging me to live my best life, but seemed to have no real understanding of what I'd lost. The cafe was filling up with the lunch crowd, couples sharing meals, business people grabbing quick bites, families with young children. I watched them all, these people living their ordinary, unremarkable lives, and I wondered if they knew how precious that ordinariness was. My phone buzzed with a text from the real estate agent. The house had an offer, a young couple with a toddler who loved the backyard where Daisy had learned to ride her bike. I thought about that backyard, about the life I'd built there and then systematically destroyed in pursuit of something I couldn't even name anymore. Excitement, passion, validation, all I'd really found was emptiness. As I walked to my car, I caught my reflection in the cafe window. I looked older, harder somehow. The woman staring back at me was a stranger, someone who had traded everything that mattered for a few moments of feeling desired. I drove to my new apartment, a sterile one-bedroom place across town. The silence there was different from the silence in my marriage. That silence had been comfortable, familiar. This silence was hollow, echoing with everything I'd lost. On Friday evening, I picked up Daisy for my first official custody weekend. She chatted excitedly about school, about her friends, about the new bedtime stories Daddy had been reading to her. "Do you like your new apartment, Mummy?" she asked as we pulled into my parking space. "It's fine, sweetheart. We'll make it cozy." But as we climbed the stairs to my empty apartment, I realized that cozy was something you built with someone else. It was shared meals, and inside jokes and quiet Sunday mornings. It was everything I'd thrown away. That night, as I tucked Daisy into the unfamiliar bed in my spare room, she looked up at me with those trusting eyes. "Mommy, are you happy now?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean, baby?" "Daddy said you left because you weren't happy. Are you happy now?" I looked down at my daughter, this innocent child who had been caught in the crossfire of my selfish choices, and I felt something break inside me. "I'm working on it," I whispered. But as I sat alone in my living room after she fell asleep, I knew the truth. I wasn't happy. I was lonelier than I'd ever been in my marriage. I had traded a life of quiet contentment for a life of regret and isolation. The papers from the cafe were still in my purse, final and irreversible. I pulled them out and read through them one more time, seeing my signature on every page, proof of every choice I'd made, every bridge I'd burned. Outside my window, I could see other apartment buildings, other lives being lived behind lit windows. Somewhere across town, Evan was probably reading to himself in the guest room at his parents' house, planning for the future he'd build without me. I had wanted excitement, passion, the feeling of being alive. Instead, I'd found loneliness, regret, and the hollow ache of everything I'd lost. The promotion party felt like a lifetime ago, but I could still remember the moment I'd chosen to flirt with Jonas instead of celebrating my husband's achievement. Such a small choice, such devastating consequences. I thought I didn't do anything wrong, just had a little fun at my husband's promotion party. But sitting alone in my empty apartment, listening to my daughter sleep in the next room during our court-mandated weekend together, I finally understood the truth. I had done everything wrong. And now I would spend the rest of my life living with the consequences of those choices. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.